Hey friends, and welcome back. Today we're going to look into a Path of Exile 2 build concept. Now with Path of Exile 2 approaching so quickly, I am very excited to see what we'll be working with when we get in-game in only a few short weeks. In just a few days, we're getting the announcement livestream where we're going to be flooded with details, but before that, I wanted to put out some speculation on ideas I've been working on to help enable 1 or even 0 button builds in POE 2. Now, if you're trying to avoid spoilers or details, this is your warning to stop watching, as we're going to be looking into some skill gem info in just a second. Path of Exile 2 is changing many things from the Path of Exile we know today. And one of those changes that I'm absolutely in love with is the way that meta gems work. We're going to use Cast on Crit as an example. In Path of Exile 1, you need to link Cast on Crit with both an attack and a spell, and when the attack crits, the spell is cast. In Path of Exile 2, based on the info we have, it will no longer work that way. And there are several notable differences that I think will make Cast on Crit builds better in PoE 2 than they ever were in PoE 1. Number 1, more inclusive crits. This is likely the biggest difference, and it's going to be pretty huge for build making in the future. Based on what we know, Cast on Crit no longer needs to link to an attack that has to crit. In fact, based on the wording of the gem here, it doesn't need to be an attack at all, so any crit will contribute to Cast on Crit buildup, very possibly including the skill that Cast on Crit is casting. This means it might be possible, with the right setup, to have a Cast on Crit skill cast itself. Now, difference number 2 is more support gems. Cast on Crit is now a meta gem that reserves Spirit and gives a buff to your character. In PoE 1, you need to link Cast on Crit to an attack to trigger it, and also to a spell that is going to be triggered. In Path of Exile 2, the attack skill is no longer needed, which means you get an extra support gem to further empower the spell of choice. And difference number 3 is the method of trigger. Path of Exile 1, Cast on Crit did just that. When you crit, you cast. In Path of Exile 2, meta gems as a whole do something a little different. They build up energy, and when the skill that is linked to it has the required amount of energy, then the skill is cast. Now, I expect the mana cost of the skill is still going to need to be paid, but it is this energy buildup mechanic that I think is going to allow the flexibility of meta gems to apply to more generic circumstances. In the case of Cast on Crit, all crits you make count rather than only some. This gives a ton of flexibility in creating builds using this new system that was just not possible in Path of Exile 1. Now let's talk about the energy buildup thing real quick. We have a really good idea already on how this works thanks to the Cast on Shock and Cast on Freeze gems. Both of them give some details on how this mechanic works. For each 0.1 second of base cast time on the spell that you've linked, 10 max energy is added to the Cast on Crit or whichever meta gem you're using. This is additive, so if you have more than one spell on a single meta gem, then it adds the base cost of those two spells together. Then, when the max energy is reached, all the linked spells are cast. This means that the amount of crits that you need to pull off for the cast of a spell is up to you and can be sped up or slowed down by selecting spells with lower or higher base cast times. Let's take a look at Spark, for instance. Spark has a base cast time of 0.7 seconds. This means that the energy needed to cast this meta skill gem is 70. For Cast on Crit, that is 7 crits that are needed to trigger Spark. If you instead use something like Comet, with a base cast time of 1 second, you will need 10 crits in order to trigger the spell. Finally, if you wanted to cast 2 spells for the same Cast on Crit, you would need to combine the cast time. Let's say Ice Nova and Frostbolt. Ice Nova has a cast time of 1 second, and Frostbolt 0.8 seconds. This means that a total of 18 crits will trigger both Ice Nova and Frostbolt at the same time. You might wonder why you want to do this. Well, it's because casting Ice Nova near Frostbolt makes the Frostbolt the center of the Nova instead. I don't know if this combination is going to work with the same cast on crit, since the frostbolt really wouldn't be very far away from you or even on top of you, so it might not matter. But it's one of the examples of the flexibility that you have using this new system. Okay, Joe, how does this make cast on crit possibly broken? Well, let me paint a very hypothetical picture for you. Let's say first that you build a character in such a way as to have 100% crit chance with the spell that you picked. Then you use that spell with cast on crit. If the spell that you pick can hit as many times as it needs to cast itself, then it might be possible for a cast on crit spell to trigger itself. Now, this is all speculation and we can't say for sure until we get in the game, but here is the idea that I want to test as soon as I can. I am going to use Lightning Storm in a cast on crit setup. Lightning Storm has a cast time of 0.9 seconds, so we need 9 crits to make it trigger itself. Lightning Storm is a spell that continuously hits enemies within the area with lightning during its duration. If you look in the video here, I'm pretty sure this is what Lightning Storm is, so this is what it's going to look like. The base duration of Lightning Storm is 10 seconds, and worst case, if there's only one enemy in the range of the storm, it will hit that enemy every 0.4 seconds. This gives us 25 hits over a 10-second duration, and if we have a maxed out crit chance, we have plenty of hits in order to trigger a new storm. However, this spell has a limit of 1 storm, so we need to increase the limit with the increased limit support, which also reduces the duration by half. So now we have 12 hits to trigger Storm 2, which is still above our 9 needed, so we should still be okay. Now, we can make this a little more comfortable by adding a more duration support to bring us back to 8 seconds for 20 hits, and that should be pretty comfortable in that range of cast on crit looping. Now we add any skill that can crit a few times on a manual cast to kick off our loop, and I think it'll feel pretty good. Now, please remember, all of this is speculation. We can't really know anything until we're in-game and playing around with the mechanics, but I think the flexibility of builds with meta gems is incredible, and I can't wait to see what we all come up with in December. If you like this video, please let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see what unhinged nonsense I try out in POE 2. I will be streaming on launch, so if you want to see those bad choices I make live, then drop by my Twitch, and we'll find all the cozy builds we can together, and probably fail a lot. You can find links to those down in the description below. I can't wait for the launch of POE 2, and I can't wait to see all of you there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.